mai. Ko Mōwas Ngamaunga, ko Seven Te Awa, ko Ngāti Ngarahi Te Iwi, ko Stevens Te Hapu, ko NZ Tuatahi Te Waka, ko Haerenga Te Waka Te Marae, ko Pōrahi Wānanga Matua Ahau. My name's Philip Stevens, I am the GM of Analysis, Research and Evaluation, and that was the sum total of my te reo, but I'm getting there. So I'm really pleased to have Ben and Basil along today. It's actually a two-man job today. So a quick introduction to those of you who don't know Basil. He's Kai Rangahau Matua, Senior Researcher at Te Wananga, NZCER. His research projects, his work includes Te Ahu o Te Reo, the health of Te Reo Māori in homes and communities, Tau Toko Kona Te Reo, the meaning of Te Reo Māori in kura and schools. So I was asked to introduce this because I'm English, and so I think it's okay for me to not pronunciation, but he's a loads of wonderful work. This is a really exciting piece of work for us to be involved in. And I'm not going to say much more because you don't want to come here to listen to me. So I'll introduce you to Basil. We'll get going. And is it sort of questions at the end or? Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. All yours.
Rongo mai atua, e hua tō tino, e hua tō aro. Kia tapa tapa tū, kia tapa tapa rangi, ki ngā rangi nāo e ki tūturo whiti whakamaua kia tīna, haumi e hui e tā e ki e. Tuatahi, me mihi ka tika, ki te mana whenua tēnei rohe, te atiawa, tai atu ki Taranaki, haere ki raro, ka tai atu ki Ngāti tō rangatira, atu ki Ngāti Raukawa, whakawhiti ngā paimaunga, tai atu ki rangitāne kahungunu, ki oi anō kia rātou, he mihi nui. Ngāti ngai tua, kei rongi a koutou, kei rongi a tātou, haere atu rā, atu no tātou, tono rātou ki a rātou, tātou ki a tātou. I te mea, kua pepe a mai taku hoa, hou, me pērā huki a hau, ko rangi tūmau te maunga, ko rua māhanga te awa, ko Ngāti Kahungunu, me rangitāne ngā iwi, ko te ori te marae, ko ngā tau e waru te whare kōriti mana whakarau te tangata, ko Basil ki nāha. Nā reira, kia koutou, ko tatu mai I tēnei wā mo tēnei kaupapa, he mihi nui kia koutou, heoi anō, ka huri au ki te reo tuarua. Thank you very much for inviting me along to talk to this kaupapa. I'm really happy to be here. I've brought along Ben, and Ben, do you want to do a little quick intro of yourself?
Kia ora koutou. Ben Gardner, I'm the manager of the professional services team at NZCER, and our team in our area takes quite a role in working with project teams around the development of new products, etc. So I'm really excited to be here in partnership, or just playing a small role, pushing buttons and what have you, with Basil and showing you the Māori tool. Yeah, we're really excited about it. Yeah, really exciting session. I'll jump back in right now.
Good. And then just very quickly, just go over into my te reo background, because I think it's obviously if you're developing a te reo assessment, it's probably useful to have some kind of te reo background. So I'm a licensed interpreter through Taurewhiri, a translator interpreter, and I've had that since 2004. So I was actually just doing numbers, so that's like 15 years. 15 years is crazy. And I've taught off and on te reo, along with another. I've had a few jobs in there, but from the mid-1990s, I used to teach the Te Papa staff te reo back when they were still just Museum of New Zealand before they shifted, and done a variety of sort of contract work and tertiary institutions. Awatopi, an outpost of Awanuiarangi, taught Dip Māori there. Also toured up at Māori Studies up at EIT for a number of years. So, but I come with a sort of background in terms of teaching te reo to adults, and so really what I've tried to do is take that knowledge and then use the support around me to put that within the sort of framework of Te Aho Arataki Maro, the curriculum guidelines for te reo Māori, New Zealand curriculum. And so what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about the development, and then we'll do a little show and tell, and Ben's going to drive that a little bit, so you can sort of see how it works in action. And happy for questions at the end, preferably easy to medium questions. And I'll put the rest of the rest off. Okay. Oh, and also just to note, should acknowledge Pt.1 and her team, because they've already sort of had a bit of a preview, sat down and had a talk through this and look through it. So that was also useful to get a sense of some of the questions that might pop up. Okay, so what apologies, managed to open the wrong one.
Let's go that one. Let go.
All right. Okay. So, what I want to do is just go back to how did it start? How did we get to the presentation? Because I think the background is actually quite useful. Actually, before I talk about it, so basically this is where it sits, and hopefully when Ben logs in a little bit later you'll see it as well. So that's the Te Reo Māori and Online Language Assessment for years 4 to 9, English medium. So this is actually what it is. Okay, fine. It's a CAT. It's a computer adaptive test. And can I get a sense of who's familiar with computer adaptive tests and how they work? Put your hands up. Okay, that's quite interesting. So a computer adaptive test is one that basically adapts to the ability of the student. So rather than a static test where your class all gets the same 30 questions, we have a pool of a little bit over 200 questions, and then as the student answers the questions, as they get questions wrong or right, then the algorithm has a bit of a look and says, okay, they're doing pretty well, so we'll give them some harder questions until they start getting a couple wrong. Go, okay, well let's start giving them in this range. And so it's actually quite normal to get questions wrong, and the mix of questions that you get right and wrong is actually largely irrelevant to your score at the end. So it's something that you sort of got to, pun intended I suppose, adapt to a little bit. And because, yeah, so basically students are all expected to achieve around about 60% of their questions correctly. Now, what we've found, and actually the sort of hands up suggest that as well, is that for the teachers that are working within Te Reo Māori who were part of our trials, they weren't familiar with adaptive tests, and this caused a little bit of a problem. We did sort of explain how they work, but and I'll get to this. So we said, you know, trial this before you do it with your students, you know, go through, trial it, and then, so here's what one of the kaiako said, and it's actually reasonably typical of what we got from a number of kaiako. Aroha mai, our senior kaiako have done the assessment themselves and have decided that, knowing what they know, it will be too hard for our kids. So they didn't want to do it. And another teacher tried it and said it was too hard. It's too hard for my year 9s, but I'll give it to my year 10s. And so the assessment is not too hard for year 9s or year 10s. We've got year 4s that are happily doing it. It was really that, and we had put in a little bit of an explanation around how adaptive tests work, but people often will go straight to the, just give me my login and I'll log in and I'll, you know, and so I did manage to, after talking to a number of kaiako, explain how it works, and then some of them went, okay, actually we'll give it to our students. So anyway, this is a little bit of the explanation for, I don't know if anyone's Harry Potter fans, this is the mirror of, someone will know how to say it properly, erased. But basically in the book Harry Potter goes to this mirror and he has a look, and what he sees, he thinks his parents are there because he can see them in the mirror, and it turns out that's his heart's desire. And when, I've forgotten his name, his redhead friend, Ron, goes and has a look, he actually sees a picture of himself, you know, winning the cup for Quidditch.
We're practicing.
Relevant.
We're trying to.
And so that's what's happening, is that they're going through, they're doing the assessment, and because they're relatively good at Te Reo, they're getting a lot of it right, and so they're going, man, look at the questions that I'm getting, there's no way my students will be able to get these questions. And so what I was able to do for the ones I was able to convince, I sent them questions, example of questions that the typical student was getting. And then when they saw that, they were like, okay, well that's fine. Okay, I was going to put this at the end, but I've just popped it here. Anyway, in terms of, this is actually from our technical manual, but if a student, and the green student there is sitting around about in the middle, and if they're sitting around about the middle, what it means is that they have about a 50% chance of getting items in the middle, 70% of answering the ones below, and 90% of in answering the questions in the first stage. So it gives you a little bit of a guide if you're thinking around where do we focus our effort, do we do a review so that we kind of all know the basics and we're sitting up here, then you could go, let's do a big review and make sure we know all this, or let's do a bit of a development around here, or we've got quite a bit of work that we can do around in this area. Okay, sorry, now we're going back to the beginning, okay, and how we kind of kicked off. So it actually starts with national monitoring, NZCER, and how many people are familiar with this? Good number, maybe about a third, quarter. So national monitoring is designed to assess and understand student achievement across a curriculum at primary level. And so what it does is it goes through, takes a snapshot of Year 4, Year 8 students in a particular subject, and it follows on from NEM, National Education Monitoring Project. Now, when I was involved in it, it was for learning languages, and we decided as part of learning languages to try and assess Te Reo. Now, I think that the learning languages part, in Te Reo in particular, is a good news story. It's a very good news story. Because can we find a subject that Māori students are highly engaged in and are succeeding in? And the answer is yes, we can. Te Reo Māori. Here are some of the key findings, but you can see on both of them, Year 8, Year 4, Year 8, you can see on the far left, those are your Māori students in terms of their achievement, and we can see down there, they have greater confidence in Te Reo Māori, they have a more positive attitude to learning Te Reo Māori, and they speak Te Reo Māori at home more often. Now, why this is really significant is if you want to go back and run through national NMSSA and then go back to NEM and then find out what was the relative success of Māori students in terms of achievement and attitude, it was the other way around. So here is the sort of, I think, the highlight in terms of something that, if you want to find something that Māori students in primary school are connected to, it's Te Reo. They're doing better and they have more positive attitude to it. So, to do that, we had to develop a static test. So the assessment we did wasn't adaptive at that stage. It's later on that we decided to do the adaptive assessment. And one of the things because we were basically assessing 2,000 Year 4 students, 2,000 Year 8 students, and what we know is that, well, at that stage we hadn't done the research, but what we had kind of heard anecdotally was that relatively Te Reo ability within English medium schools was low. And so if we're getting the students to sit down and do 15 questions, what do we do to ensure that they're not sitting there and going, oh, I didn't know any of those and I got 15 wrong. This is a pretty miserable test and I think I hate Te Reo Māori. So what we wanted to really do was find out what are some easy questions. What's a bunch of easy questions to put alongside some medium questions, maybe a little bit harder. And so actually, initially I sort of thought, well, how do I find out, what the common te reo words are that we know? Because one of the, probably the defining aspect of English, New Zealand English, is the te reo Māori that we use within New Zealand English. So, but what are those words? And fortunately, John McAllister had already done a little bit of work on this. And so what that is a little list there. The U3A is University of the Third Age, so it's actually, he does a little bit of a generational comparison between basically what are the sort of the words commonly known. Each percentage is what percentage of that group knew those questions versus the secondary schools. And he went and looked at 4 secondary schools in Wellington, but he gave a very comprehensive list of what words were commonly known, and so that's what we kind of started with. Take the most common ones and use them. There's a few more there as well. You can see haka. So some of them are no surprises because you'll know these words just even if you don't have strong te reo through your knowledge of New Zealand English. In fact, we were talking to someone who came from South America talking about this, and I said, so for instance, haka, and she goes, and what's that? So she didn't follow rugby. So it was, but we would expect, and as you can see there, so really high 90% will know haka. So there's one word that we can take and we can use within our assessment. Te reo, aroha. So this isn't the full list. I can't remember. He's got sort of 100 odd words, and we basically cherry picked out of there. What were some of the better words? And from there, so that was one part. But what we also did, as well as that, was look through it and figure out, what are some of the words we'd expect, within being taught within primary school, commands, colours, simple numbers, those kinds of things. Did a little bit of a mix of those, and put them in an assessment. 15 questions. Students did 15 questions, and I'll put it on here. Yeah. So the easiest question in terms of how the students went was write what kia ora means in English, and over 90% of the students got that. The hardest was write the Māori word for orange, and another one was what does titiro mean. Now what's interesting about that, and if we think about it, is that's not really a really hard question, orange. It's a little bit harder around that way, but this is for Year 4, Year 8 students. So of those 4,000 students that did those 15 questions, we had a bank of 40 questions, so we kind of mixed them around. But of those 4,000 students, only 2.5% got them all right. Okay, so it gave us a bit of a sense of where are students sitting. And so when we came to develop the assessment, we knew, because actually the part of the assessment we originally tried, we tried a little bit sort of medium hard questions, and no one could do them, so we dropped those off. So what we knew was that if we think about level 1, for instance, that we needed to make it quite deep and slice it across in levels so that we had a sort of a low level 1, a medium, and then a slightly higher. And then in terms of those 4 categories there, those all fit comfortably within level 1 of Te Aho Arataki. So giving questions out of level 1 and 4,000 students, Year 4, Year 8, only 2.5% get everything correct. Okay, so that gives us a bit of a sense where things are sitting. Te Aho Arataki Maro. So yeah, we'll look at the relevant curriculum document, and I'm going to say the whole thing. The lengthily named Te Aho Arataki Marae mo Te Aho I Te Reo Māori Kura Auraki Curriculum Guidelines for Teaching and Learning Te Reo Māori in English Medium Schools, Years 1 to 13, was the basis that we used in terms of the assessment, because it's actually a really good document, but we did find both through NZCER and then other work we've done that not enough kaiako are using it. But we've basically built the assessment around that. So, and what we focused on is the achievement objectives. So the questions, the words, phrases, sentences are almost all in some way based or sit within one of these achievement objectives, and it's levels 1 to 3. So, so for instance, greet, farewell, acknowledge, kia ora, kei te pēhea koe, how are you, kei te pai, I am fine. That would be sitting within the greet and farewell. Communicate about number using days of the week, months and dates. So, in terms of week, te rāhina, te mane, numbers, tahi rua toriwha, so on. And so, with an adaptive assessment or any type of assessment, really, what you're trying to do is you're trying to take a sample. Trying to take a sample of, you know, what are the words, phrases, sentences that are being used, taught, learned by students, and trying to say that if they can do certain of these, then we can tell something about where their ability is, where it's sitting. So what we did was we used a number of things, including the 1,000 frequent words, frequent te reo Māori words on TKI, draft of Te Aho Arataki Marae. So the interesting thing about the curriculum guidelines is that if you have a look at the achievement objectives, it doesn't really come with examples. So it doesn't say, you know, like if we're talking about communication or we're talking about greetings, it doesn't say, you know, like kia ora or tēnā koe. But the draft, which is really interesting because a whole bunch of Māori teachers carry the draft around with them. The draft originally did. So it had a number of examples of what you know, achievement objective 1.1 or 1.2 might look like, what some of the sort of bank of words that would be useful, so we used that. We also, after national monitoring, did some work on learning progressions, te reo Māori, and that was sort of